Today on the Beyond Jaws podcast, we have a very special guest, Dr. Taylor Chappell, who's here to talk about his career journey studying predators like sharks. Imagine that on the Beyond Jaws podcast. He studied white sharks for about 15 years and a number of other different projects. He talks about how he meandered through that journey that we always see each and every year. And it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about this. So you're not going to want to miss this episode. Let's start the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. I'm your co-host, Angelo, and here with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. Dave, are you ready to talk about Dr. Taylor Chappell?
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to having Taylor on the show. As you know, he travels a lot, so he's been kind of hard to pin down and get him on a have time for him and stuff. So we're really happy we were able to get him on here before he jets off to Argentina and Germany and who knows from there.
Who knows where?
Yeah. But no, I'm really looking forward to talking about doing a shark research around the world and in Oregon. And I think people really enjoy it. And he like a lot of the people we've had that are kind of a mid to late career, he's had quite an interesting journey to get where he's at. Mm-hmm. And I think people will really enjoy hearing his story about his journey to get where he is today in Oregon.
Well, and also starting off in Ohio, right by Lake Erie, and starting to talk about how, the great things he had to say about Lake Erie, which we'll hear in just a bit. And I think, he's not the only one from his lab. I think there's two other people from the lab, Alex, who we've had on, Alex McInturf, who we've had on the podcast before. And I think there's somebody else.
James Filikowski.
Filikowski,
who has not been on the podcast yet.
Not been on the podcast yet. Well, soon enough.
He'll be
also
on.
From Ohio. So it's kind of cool that they're all from Ohio and they all end up on the coast studying sharks and predators. I think it's just great. But this is going to be a great interview. So here's the interview with Taylor talking about his career in predator-prey relationships, especially with sharks. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you after. Hey, Taylor. Welcome to the Beyond Jaws podcast. Are you ready to talk about sharks?
I'm so ready. Let's jump in.
Okay.
All right.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. We have another terrific guest today. We have Dr. Taylor Chappell, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Fisheries, Wildlife, and Conservation Sciences at Coastal Oregon Marine Experiment Station at Oregon State. And wow, that's a mouthful to say. Taylor is a leader of the Big Fish Lab, where he uses a variety of electronic tagging technology and analysis to study the movement, behavior, physiology, habitat use, and foraging ecology of large sharks and fish. He studied the movement patterns and behavior and population dynamics of sharks and other large marine predators from California to South Africa and Australia. And among the species he's focused on is the white shark, salmon shark, and my favorite shark, the seven-gill shark, off the Oregon coast and how they affect the coastal ecosystem. Taylor has nearly 100 publications, and his lab focuses on marine science, communication, education, developing and contributing to significant outreach in science-based popular media. And I'll note that a lot of his events happen to be held at local breweries in Newport, Oregon, which if you're over there, they have some outstanding breweries, by the way, FYI, if you're listening. And as I mentioned, his current position is the assistant professor. He did his schooling. He did a bachelor's in biology with a concentration in marine science at Boston University and a PhD in ecology at the University of California, Davis. And with that, welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good. So, how did you get interested in marine science and sharks in particular?
Well, I have probably the same story that every shark scientist does. I grew up in Ohio. And actually, I will say that it is pretty funny. I know that you've had Alex McInturf on here. And who's part of the Big Fish Lab that I run, and James Filikowski as well. All three of us are from the great state of Ohio. So
that's hilarious. That's awesome.
As I like to say, it's a wonderful state to be from. So I did really start my sort of career path in Ohio. I grew up right on Lake Erie, so right on the Great Lakes. And for anybody who hasn't been to the Great Lakes, they're incredible. They are massive. And so I think when people think of lake, they think of, that thing that you can see across and you can swim across it at summer camp. But, we're talking, 75 miles by 35 miles and just huge bodies of water. And so I grew up swimming every day in the summer, boating, surfing the Great Lakes, all those things. And so it really had this love of water. And I ended up in Boston, where I sort of got into a lab that was doing a lot of predator-prey dynamics. And that just more or less, sort of steamrolled into a study of sharks, because what better predator prey systems are there in the oceans than sharks and everything else around them?
So when you were going, how'd you happen to pick, just because they had a predator program there at Boston University? Why'd you
Yeah,
pick
I
that
ended
one?
up, as most high school going into undergrads are, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I wanted to go into marine work, but I really loved playing soccer. So I ended up at BU because
Oh,
they had an incredible soccer program and a really good marine program. And so I ended up similar to Alex McInturf. We live like this parallel lives, just
Yeah,
yeah,
because she's a soccer player too, right?
yeah, just maybe a few decades apart. But
just a
yeah,
few.
I ended up playing soccer for a couple years when I was at BU as well.
Okay.
And so that's how I ended up there. But it was really fortuitous for me because the marine program there and the opportunities to work with fisheries, I think it was really transformational in understanding really how good science can be if it's
Mm.
integrated with the folks that care about it, the stakeholders. So whether it was the fishing communities in the Northeast, or the academics that were there, some of the nonprofits that I worked with as well, it was really a great place to be, sort of in the communities that the research mattered to.
Yeah. Did you happen to work with like Greg Scommel or any of the Narragansett people doing shark stuff up there at the time?
So funny enough, I knew of ScoMo, but hadn't I didn't work with ScoMo until actually after I'd left Boston. Um,
Mm.
I've got some funny stories that I won't tell
Oh,
about my
come on.
experiences with Greg ScoMo
Well, we're
that were
recorded. This is the best time.
that were in an American Elasmorank Society meeting, when he won a certain award that I won't mention on the air. Uh, but I did, and then I did actually almost end up in Narragansett for grad school, and it was one of those transformational grad school interviews, because I went into it, and this is a great for anybody out there that wants to go to grad school. Is I showed up with slacks on and a button down shirt, and Lisa Natanson looked at me. She said, "Hey, are you going to a business interview after this?" So it kind of put the field of science in perspective for me.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is I had the same thing. I remember I used to work for the federal government here in Canada, and it was fisheries and oceans, and we had a research lab. And I walked in and I had slacks and a button down top and everything like that. And I remember somebody pulling me aside. It's like, you're a scientist, right? Like, you can come in. It's hot outside. It's the summer. Like shorts, sandals. You're good. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, gotcha.
I'm like my mom's worst nightmare, because forever she was like, "Oh, do you need a sports coat or something?" I was like, "This t-shirt that I have on right now, this is my fancy shirt. It doesn't have any holes in it."
Yeah. I could
love it.
picture Lisa. Lisa and I did our masters together at Moss Landing back in the day. So her and I go way, and I could just absolutely picture her if you're walking with a button down, how that's gonna go. It's good
Yep,
stuff.
yep.
So
That's one of
hopefully
the
it was
stories that'll live with me forever.
Oh, for sure,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Well, so you didn't end up staying in the Northeast. Where did you migrate to after your undergrad degree?
Yeah, so after undergrad, I had that idea that I was going to go straight into grad school, and I actually got into a program in the Northeast, and funding situation changes, so I ended up not losing my. I guess I lost my position, lost my funding. So it was kind of past the window of applying to things, and so I went into now what do I do mode, and I ended up
Mm.
working for AmeriCorps, which is sort of for folks that don't know, it is the domestic version of the Peace Corps. And so I worked for a group called Salish Sea Expeditions, which was a educational sailboat on the Puget Sound. And so I taught marine
Nice.
science, water quality, boat handling skills and things like that to students from underserved communities in the Seattle area. So that was ended up being a really cool opportunity, one of those like door shuts, window opens cliches, but it really
Mm-hmm.
was another foundational moment to understand like how good it feels to be able to communicate the work that you do
Hmm.
to folks that are are excited and open to it, and especially folks that don't often get that opportunity. So that was a really, I think for me, was a really impressionable period, and impactful, I should say, period for me.
There are a lot of those programs out west, like in Puget Sound too, where you have a lot of boats that go out and teach like elementary school students, underserved communities, high school students. I was actually part of a board for Pacific Marine Research that was out in Puget Sound too. They had a boat that they'd take out, and it's like the Marine Science Afloat program, I think it was called. It was a while ago. And they would take people out, they would take kids out like from elementary schools and have schools that go out and stuff like that. But Puget Sound's pretty big for that kind of stuff. And you mentioned like being on a sailboat, you learned, what it was like to be at sea. Did you learn like anything? Did you learn anything like that while growing up near Lake Erie, like, boat handling skills and things like that? But sailboats, I mean, you can probably sail on Lake Erie, but not probably readily available, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I grew up sailing. And so
did you? Okay.
Yeah, I grew up racing sailboats. My dad still has the same boat since 1980.
Nice.
So I go every year to help him put it in the water, take it out. Actually, I don't help him
Awesome.
every year. He reminds me when I don't go help him. But so yeah, so I grew up sailing, and so for me it was a great step into an opportunity to use some of those skills that I had learned. And actually, up to that point, I had got my captain's license, so I have
Sweet.
I'm a licensed captain. So it was, these skills and experiences that I was able to bring the science and bring some of that sailing stuff, all of these students, and built a bunch of curriculum. So it was like a really cool hands-on opportunity to see the things that I was interested in, as well as, developing some more of those skills that ended up being, curriculum development is a huge part of what I do as a professor.
Did you ever feel at times like you were stuck? Like, did you ever like feel like, oh, I don't want to be in this forever. I want to go back into research, and like, because I know some people sometimes when you meander, right? You go in and out of what you want maybe in your path, or you discover certain things. Did you ever feel like that on that boat where you're like, am I going to do this forever? Am I going to do this for longer? Or I want to move out of that area? Not to say that it was bad, but just in terms of like where you've come, like, is this what you always wanted? And did you ever feel stuck in that situation?
No, that's a great question, because that's usually when I have students come into my office and say, how did you get where you are? These are the examples that I give them, and I'm like, there is no linear path that I took, and most of what I did was figured out things I didn't want to do. I think
true.
as a young person, we have these ideas of like, I'm going to do this and this and this, and this is where I'm going to get to. But the reality of it is that there's so many cool things to do along the way that it's fun to try it. And it's great to be able to narrow down the things you don't want to do. So, having an experience that you don't like is, in my mind, almost more valuable than those experiences you do. And there are parts that, that I loved about that education part of it. But as you said, it wasn't everything I wanted to do. I wasn't doing cutting edge science. I wasn't leading these big questions that I had about the world. I was helping students understand how water quality worked, and the relationship between dissolved oxygen and plankton in the water. But I wasn't answering and asking the questions that I really wanted to. So it was great, but I knew that wasn't the right place for me.
Did you at this point did you have any particular interest in sharks, or at that point, or?
I did, but I had that interest in sharks in terms of they were cool and someday that'd be fun to do, but not in the sense of, understanding them in a really meaningful way, or thinking that my career was going to be about sharks in a meaningful way. I thought that, sharks they're cool and incredible. I actually remember my last year in undergrad, I was living and working down in Woods Hole, and that's when the big National Geographic sort of centerfold spread of California white sharks. I remember, this fold out of folks tagging sharks, and I remember being like, that's the coolest thing. And the white shark is on the cover with the big jaw wide open, you know. And I remember thinking that would be amazing to do. I didn't have any aspirations at that time that 15 years down the road that person doing that tagging was going to be me, you know, and those people in that photo were going to be my colleagues. So it was a, you know, kind of a windy road to get there. But I do remember these sort of like seminal or pivotal parts of my life that sort of steered the directionality of it.
Okay. So you're in the Pacific Northwest doing the stuff there with the water quality, and then kind of where'd you do from there?
so then that was like you know, that's like a 2 year or year and a half stint that I did that. And then I ended up in the observer program at the Florida Museum of Natural History. So down working with George Burgess as an observer. And so I worked with George for a bit, and then I went over and worked with Enrique Cortez and John Carlson over at the labs for the population assessment group over there. And so I just that's the point that I got into sharks more, I guess, significantly, is when I really started to get into the science of the sharks and really interested in them, because I got a lot more hands-on opportunity. And as y'all know, like, the more that you're in an environment, like the questions and the interest and all those things just sort of pop up. They just start happening, right? Because you experience these things.
Yeah. And so at what point did you decide, like, okay, I'm going to go back and do a PhD now versus...
I was sitting in a talk, or it was just like one of those like small little, you know, like a handful of people from the population assessment group in Panama City. And I remember it was John Carlson, and he was doing this population growth curve. And I just remember looking at it, and he was talking about how you know, just how some different parameters like fecundity and things go into making this curve. And I just remember sitting there and be like, I like math and I like sharks. This looks super cool. I was like, and it was at that moment I was like, you know, I think I want to be a shark population modeler. And so that's just sort of where the trajectory went. It was just this one random sort of like lunchtime, you know, meeting presentation that we had. And that got me sort of rolling on the work that I did for my PhD. So I ended up going to UC Davis and worked with a population modeler, a professor named Lou Botsford. Lou didn't know the first thing about sharks. Like, sharks were some fish in the ocean. But what Lou is incredible at is he's incredible at modeling marine ecosystems. And so I talked to Lou and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in sharks. We don't know a ton. We don't have a ton of data about them for these questions that you ask. But I'm sure you could teach me some methods that I could start to assess these." And that's how I ended up in grad school there at UC Davis.
Okay. Was Lewis Barnett there when you were there?
He was not there yet. Actually, Lewis and I were in Panama City together. So he was at the labs in Panama City at the same time. So he and I overlapped there, and then we basically just missed each other at Davis after Lewis got there.
Yeah, because he came out and was a master's student of mine at Moss Landing. Now, but you went straight to a PhD versus like a master's degree, so, which is kind of how'd you make that decision to jump straight to the PhD?
Yeah, I think that I had spent enough time, you know, I spent the last couple of years in between undergrad and grad school to think about what I wanted to do. And I guess in my mind, the master's is a great time for thinking about and experiencing and trying things to a degree to figure out what you really want to do. And I sort of took that 2 years of gap years to do that. And so when Lou had a position available, I thought that, you know, this is a great opportunity. I could just go into a PhD. And the questions that I had were big and long enough that I couldn't do them in a shorter. It took me 6 years to be able to come up with a long enough time series to do these abundance estimates of white sharks, and so it just wasn't in the time frame that I would have been able to do them for a master's.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because a lot of students typically do the master's and go to the PhD, and whereas you went straight to the PhD. But I think, like you said, you had a couple gap years where you're out working in the field and you got a clearer idea what you're going to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. You know, it's the PhD is like, it's such an investment, right? It's it's 5 years, 7 years, sometimes more than that. And you really want to know that what you're doing is what you want to do and it's going to be meaningful, because you've got to, it's,
Yeah.
you know, as you all know, it's like
You've
you get
typecasted yourself after that, right?
yeah, exactly. And you've got 3 years of grind, like 4 years of fun field work or whatever, and then 3 years of grind and analysis, and you've got to really, you got to really love it.
Yeah.
So
How did so when you got into Davis there, and Lou wasn't really a shark guy? How did you wind up getting into doing the white sharks?
it's a really that's another really funny story. Again, it's like I feel like all of these stories, you ask these questions, and it's these like offhand interactions that end up being pivotal. And I always say this to my wife, and she's like, well, that's not necessarily true. She's like, you put yourself in those positions to have those random conversations that led you where you are. So I think it's a little bit of a mix. But it was a brand new student in Lou's lab, and I sat next to one of the senior grad students, a guy named Sal Jorgensen, who many of the listeners will know. And Sal and I were just chit-chatting, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the door flies open, and this man in socks jumps in, and I'm like startled, and Sal goes, "Oh, hey Taylor, this is Pete Klimley."
I knew you were going with that. Go ahead.
And so Pete just, Pete's in his socks, just jumps into the room and is like, "Hey Sal, we just, we got this funding with Barb Block at the aquarium to do some white shark work. Do you know anybody that would be interested in a project?" And I literally was sitting there like, holy crap.
It literally fell into your lap almost.
Yes,
right?
exactly. So I was like, oh, Pete, you should meet Taylor. Taylor is, in Lou's lab here, and he's wants to do, population modeling. Wouldn't the white shark be a great species to do that with? And it was like, and then from there, it just sort of like went.
Wow.
So it was, I'd like to say that like I really went out and searched that project out and things out, but it really just was
literally fell in your lap.
It was just fortuitous. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I can totally. I've known Pete since he finished his PhD back in the early '80s when I was a master's student. When you described that, you just described Pete. When you say, I can completely picture Pete in my mind, what you just described there. So anyway, I can get that. So now you got Lou and you got Pete on board, and I guess Barb Block was also involved in the.
Yeah, so Barb was the sort of the PI on the white shark side of it. She actually wasn't on my committee, but she was, the part that I had was a very small part of that much larger tag end of Pacific Pelagics projects. Yeah. And so it turned out that as I started the project, Sal actually finished up his PhD and then moved over to be a postdoc in Barb's lab. And so then Sal, going from being my mentor, grad student sort of mentor in Lou's lab, he became this postdoc mentor of me, over in Barb's lab. So it was really incredible for me to have, someone that I knew that could be such an advocate for me and really help mentor me through these projects.
Mm-hmm. And you spent, we said 6 years on that in your PhD going through that.
Yeah, somewhere between 5 and 6. Yeah,
5 and 6. Yeah, just so people listening, young people get an idea like the time commitments involved with like a PhD. Because I try to tell students like if you're going to do that, it's a big jump from like a master's degree and stuff.
Yeah.
You got to think about what you got to be fully committed to doing that.
And
financially too, right? Like it's because you worked for a bit, and then you're going back into this financially after being in school for a little bit. Like that's a big commitment too.
Yeah, and I think learning how the funding scheme works for a grad student is it's really eye opening because I think as an undergrad I never really thought about that. I never thought that like how do you actually like get a stipend, pay tuition, all those things. It's it is kind of a crazy. I guess it's very different too, depending on the university you go to. So that's sort of a thing for students that are interested in going to grad school is to really think about not only the program you're going to, but the benefits and the structure and all those things that are there to support you. I didn't think I'd ever be on a podcast talking about finances and things like this, but it's the reality of reality of the field.
Well, trust me, there's a lot of young students listening right now that have I'm sure hadn't even thought that far yet, as far as like the financial commitment to, especially when you've been working for a while and then you go back to being a poor student. It's not an easy easy way to go. I did that myself between my between my master's and PhD. It's kind of nice getting out, you're making some money, and you're thinking, I got to give up all this freaking money to go back and be a poor student again. It's not easy to do.
Yeah.
So you got through. So when you finished up your PhD, what was your next step?
So, and I will say that I actually finished the PhD faster than I had expected because my wife now, my partner at the time, was finishing up. She was a couple years ahead of me, and we both had postdoc positions at the Max Planck Institute in Germany.
Oh.
And so,
nice.
I'll go to another random story. So she was in the animal behavior department at Davis. And she was hosting a speaker, this guy named Martin Wikelski, who was coming over from Princeton. And we were kind of chit-chatting. She's like, I think we'll host him in our house because he might have some postdoc positions. He's going to be moving to Germany and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, cool, let's see what he's like. And so after the seminar, Mark came to our place, and we were trying to, test the waters a little bit with him. So we had these like pink puffy glitter slippers, and we put him in Martin's room. And we're like, let's see what he does with these. We kind of, get a sense of what her supervisor was going to be like. And he goes into the room. 5 minutes later, he walks out with these pink fuzzy puffy slippers on, just like nothing happened. And so, it was like, all right, well, this is cool. This guy is, he seems like a decent human being, and he's super smart. So let's talk. And so we started chatting with him, and he looked at me. He goes, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I study movements, behaviors, but it's mostly in sharks. And he was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Tell me a little bit more. And so I told him a little bit. And he's like, do you want to come do a postdoc too? And I was like
that.
Just like that, like literally like that. Yeah, sure. Okay. Like one of those deals.
I'll move to Germany. No problem.
Yeah. Like sounds great. And so like, the night went on, and then the next morning we were driving him to the airport, and I kind of looked at him and said, just, you did say that last night, right? Like, and he was like, oh yeah. He's like, here's the logistics, blah, blah, blah. So it ended up that, just in that random conversation of chatting with somebody about what we do, hosting one of the speakers, that we both ended up with postdocs, in Germany. We spent the next 2 years, she was doing bird movement, and I was doing shark movements, but we were, based out of Germany. So it's like these things that come up that you never expect.
So does your wife also do movements, do animal movements?
Yeah. So she's an ecophysiologist. And so she's, studies a lot of the decision making that birds make, and I guess animals in general. And so, her work is actually really similar to the work that I do. I'll sit with a decoy out the back of the boat waiting for a shark to come up to it. She'll sit at a net and wait for a bird to come down, and then put VHF tags or heart rate tags on them, and then track them. And so it's really cool. It has the same parallel work that we do in the ocean she does in the air.
Oh, cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's neat. That's really neat. Yeah. So how was Germany? You had 2 years there. Was it sound like you had a good time there?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was both culturally incredible. The people were wonderful, but also the science is super cool. We were at the Max Planck in the this town
famous,
called So the Max Planck is cool because it's sort of like, it's almost like the USGS, where you have these like offices all over the country that serve different, like there's a Max Planck Institute for molecular biology. There's one for now it's animal behavior, and these expert sort of institutes. And so we were housed with 50 other scientists from around the world that were experts in their field. And it was an ornithological institute, so a lot of bird people, but there was a young researcher studying sleep behavior in sloths. So they were actually like
so cool,
putting these electrodes into the brain of sloths and seeing how much they sleep in the wild compared to in captivity. And just like all these incredible people just doing crazy cutting edge stuff.
Wow,
That's awesome.
That sounds really cool. So I always think it's people like, especially in this field, if you get a chance to spend a year or two overseas, it's like the best thing you could ever do, just to have a chance to spend in a completely different environment. You really learn a lot about yourself and just the whole field and everything.
And I think science is done differently everywhere you go, and I think that's, I mean, you could say that for in the US as well, but even internationally, like, I'm going to Germany in about a month from now for a few months to try to establish some research partnerships to swap grad students between the University of Constance and the Max Planck in here at Oregon State, to get that sort of like different perception and different, almost like cultural field of science, because I think it is, we're doing some of the similar things, but we might be asking questions or doing the research or thinking about them in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Throughout your academic career, you went from Ohio to Boston to like Seattle area to UC Davis, like in that area, and then you're going to you went to Germany, and now you're back. You're in Oregon. How has that influenced you in the way you do science, but also, you're talking about going to Germany for 2 months. And then, we were just discussing before, you're going out in the field, to a faraway place in tomorrow or the day after. How, you're used to traveling. Did you expect this much travel when you first started your journey into science? And then how has that influenced you over that time, and how has it affected your science?
Yeah, I don't think I appreciated that I would travel this much. I mean, there was a period during my sort of second postdoc into this research scientist position I had at Stanford that I was gone 6 months of the year, easily 6 months of the year, where I was out traveling around doing different things. Dave probably looks at it and is like, "Oh, that's nothing." It's really incredible to see, the diversity of ecosystems. It's incredible to see the diversity of people, the diversity of resources that folks have to do research. I was lucky enough to be at the tail end of the Tagging and Pacific Plastics Project, which was multi-millions of dollars, and so there was support for things, but then to go to other places to appreciate how much science you can do on a limited budget. But I think the big part of what, and still now, I'm heading to Argentina tomorrow. We're going to go do some tagging some flamingos. I'm hoping to meet some potential collaborators on some 7-gill work down in Argentina as well. And I think the big part that the traveling has really instilled in me is the value of collaboration and the value of just getting outside of ourselves and outside of the space in our backyard and thinking bigger and thinking about the power that brings to science. The stuff that I don't do anything on my own. I do all of it with a huge team of people. That's what makes, in my mind, the science cool. So I think that's the great part of this, the traveling and things, is that you meet those folks, you become invested in those projects and those people and the science behind it, it sort of broadly, instead of, being really set to be like, I'm going to answer this question and this is the work I do. It's, this is the questions that we're asking, and these are this is the work that we do.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of team and the real winners in this type of lifestyle, you have 2 kids, young kids. I think it was at 9 and 11. Now they get to travel all over the world. They get to get pulled out of school and be like, "Hey, we're going to Argentina for a month. Then we're going to go to Germany for 2 months." As for them, that must be pretty cool. How do they feel, about the work that you do, and then the travel? And also, like, for both you and your wife, how much of a challenge is that for you guys to travel with your kids and for work into completely different countries? Like, there's got to be some challenges in there, but also completely rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, there's a ton to unpack in that, because it is a double-edged sword, right? When I was My wife had a faculty position at Eastern Michigan University. And at the same time, I was still a research scientist at Stanford. So that's in California. And I was basically commuting. In the meantime, we were building our house, like by hand ourselves, at the same time. And glutton.
Just to add that on.
just to add a little bit. And we had two small children. We were living out of a 12-foot camper in the backyard while we built a house with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. But anyway, I digress. So I was doing actually a 3-month stint out in California. We're filming a documentary, and we had some bad weather. So I flew back home to Michigan, and I was putting my son to bed. He was 3 years old at the time, and he reached up and he gave me a hug and he said, "Dad, I love it when you come visit us." And I was like, "Oh my God!" Kids, they can like cut to the bone like so fast. And that was the moment I was like, you know what? This lifestyle. I love it. And my wife she's a field scientist, field biologist. Well, she knows, she understands it, right? But it's like, it's not feasible anymore. You just like, you can't do that. And so that actually sort of parlayed well into this position that we both have here at Oregon State. But we're still field biologists. The kids go with us when they can, but there's often times where one of us is flying in from somewhere. Luckily, my wife's mom lives right next to the airport in Portland. So one of us will drop the kids off, catch a flight. The other one flies in. We'll go and pick the kids up and take them home. Wow. It's like there's this constant sort of, it's a puzzle that we try to put together. And
it redefines commuting to work.
Yeah,
redefines.
Seriously. Right. But it's it takes a lot of communication, and it takes a lot of flexibility. And the kids are incredible travelers, but there's also there's a cost to it for sure.
Yeah,
for sure to them.
Yeah. So you're going. So I know we were talking to you before the show. Like you were talking about flamingos. Is that your wife's project? You're going in to work with her?
Yeah. So we're on sabbatical right now. So thankfully we both started at the same time. So we have the sabbatical lined up, and so we're doing a little swapsies. So we'll do a month in Argentina for her work and a couple months in Ireland for mine. But the Argentina work is she studies stress and movement, and trying to understand how and why nomadic bird species go, and how they know when to go and how they know where to go. So she studies this small finch called the red crossbill that they'll feed on cones here in the Pacific Northwest, and then next year there'll be no cones, and all of them will be in Nova Scotia. All the birds will show up over there. And somehow they have to figure it out. They don't have this predictable cycle like we think of with sharks, having a white shark going out to the White Shark Cafe and back, boom. But these birds don't. And flamingos are the same way, but they feed in these high altitude, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 feet, highly saline lakes with, they're filter feeders. And so they do the same type of thing where they either exhaust a resource or something happens and they move, but they have to figure out when to move, and they have to figure out where to go and where the next resource is. And so we're going to be putting a series of heart rate tags on them that'll track their movements as well as their energetic expenditure to understand where the decision making comes in. Like, how do you decide when to leave?
Wow,
that's crazy.
That's pretty cool. So you don't have any really shark projects going on yet in Argentina. You're hoping to
not yet.
We're all the building.
We're trying. I'm always trying. See, I'm giving a talk down there. Hopefully, meet some folks that do started up some 7-gill projects down there, and maybe just do some some information sharing, some technique sharing, and think about some of the broader questions that maybe we can ask.
But that's like a really interesting opportunity, because it may be something that you may never have thought of before, but because you're there, you're like, well, how do I make the most of this, this travel? Let's you're on sabbatical, you can make collaborations. Who knows what discoveries they've made down there, what discoveries you can make in the future as collaborators, compare, in different areas and stuff. I think that's it's kind of cool that you do that, not just like, okay, like I'm going here, but I'm just gonna, just kind of chill out and stuff, right?
Yeah, sort of to a detriment. If my wife was here next to me, she'd be shaking her head, because last week we were down in Mexico down in Todos Santos near La Paz for my brother's 50th birthday, And in the middle of that, I ran across to La Paz, where she and I used to do some work out of, actually, and met with Mauricio Hoyos and James Ketchum at Pelagios to do a quick talk, so that I could spend a little time chatting and catching up with them. So
So you're
I love,
opportunistic.
yes, but I love the fact, because I otherwise wouldn't have gotten to see. James and I were in grad school at UC Davis, and Mauricio we've all been part of these projects. So it's like,
It's nice.
again, these collaborations. Like I love the people that I work with, as well as the species that we work with. So it's always a treat to get to see people.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. That's kind of, I think it's one of the cool side things with the whole being in this field, is you get to know people in all these different parts of the world and everything. And you just kind of get to do, it's just amazing to get these collaborations also in all these different countries as well. So yeah, that's great. I think that's like to me, it's like a kind of a side benefit you don't even really think about when you start off, because you're thinking, I'm going to go study sharks or birds or whatever. And you get you meet some great people in all these different countries and everything.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
And then you're going to Germany, the same type of thing, develop some collaborations there and.
Yeah. So we're going back to the Max Planck where we worked before, and we're trying to build an animal behavior sort of research exchange, and to give students, again, going back to that sort of international flair, just get some experience thinking and doing science somewhere else, and also working with maybe PIs that are outside of your wheelhouse. So, instead of, meeting a scientist at a Sharks International conference, you go to this, international exchange, and you meet somebody who does koala research, but they're looking at, like feeding morphology or something like that. That's totally something you wouldn't have normally done, but you get that experience. And then we'll be working with Mark Wikelski again in the Icarus project, which is it's an animal focused satellite system. So the idea is that what we have now, these Argos, is high in the far away from the Earth, and so it takes a lot of energy to transfer the signals and stuff like that. But if we do a lower orbiting satellite system, we can make smaller tags, put them on smaller animals, last longer, things like that. So that's something that we're going to be sort of helping to think about and develop the marine component of that system.
How excited is Alex to go to Germany for however long?
So sorry?
How excited is Alex to go to Germany for that exchange? Is she the first one to go?
Oh yeah, she would go in a heartbeat. I think, although I think her husband might not let her, or might not be such a fan of her being on for any more months at a time with field research. That is the key with all these projects, is that it's at some point you actually do need to spend some time at home.
For sure. But
yeah,
I was just joking about that.
But that's that's the benefit of these. It is so cool to be able to go and have these opportunities, because it really does. It increases the bar of your science. Your experience and the things that you get to see and try.
You guys you also got a project you had going on in Ireland on the basking sharks for a while as well now.
Yeah, so that's the basking shark project is I've been I think sort of like pigeonholed into the white shark field for the past 15 years that I've been studying white sharks, but I'm starting to transition my appreciation in sort of shark favoritism over to basking sharks, because they're such a cool and weird sort of shark species that don't kind of fit into the mold of everything else. So yeah, we've been working over there for the past couple of years. That's a project that Alex McInturf has really spearheaded for almost 8 years or 9 years now. So it's a great place. I mean, beautiful place, and such an incredible species to work with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how about closer to home? How about the stuff you're doing? Why don't you talk a little bit about the stuff you're doing here in Oregon?
Yeah, I'd love to. The cool thing about starting this position here was that it felt to me like a little bit of I don't know, black box or something like that. The spot that there hadn't been as much focus on. You go to Central California, you go to Southern California, there's this huge body of literature on all the species and how sharks interact into these ecosystems and the role that they play. And I think coming to the Pacific Northwest for me was a little bit different, as saying like, all right, there isn't a huge shark research presence here. There's been folks that Dave, you and others have done work from Central California up, but I think when we look at it relatively to the other places, it just doesn't have that focus. And so, right. When I got here, I had these grand plans of all these projects, and I think what I've been humbled by is one, that how difficult it is to get on the ocean in Oregon and Washington. And two, how hard it is to start something that has been done. And Dave, I'm sure you could speak weeks about this, but the idea of going somewhere where somebody hasn't developed the techniques or the seasonality or the locations or any of that stuff to study a species, and you're just like, crap, I've got to figure out when the animals are even here in order to start to study them. And so it's like that it's been such a weird, coming from California where it's like it's established, but coming to here where it's very, very different.
Well, I can tell you when I started my master's back in the early 80s, it was the same thing. There was just like, I started working at Seven Gills, as you know, and it was just like, well, they're out there. I had like nobody could tell me like other than they would see them.
Yeah,
but nobody.
We see them all the time. Yeah, that was. No, you ask, and it's like, well, my buddy saw one, in September of 1984, and you're like, so not all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I spent a good year plus. This is a master's degree too, just to figure out how to get those damn things in San Francisco and Humboldt Bay. Once I figured it out, but it was like a year of just and there was no, like I always tell, there was no roadmap. There was nobody who could say, oh, it was like, we catch them out here, but that was it. There was no like, we see them like, we saw one a few years ago, whatever, it's like, so I could totally appreciate what you and your lab are doing on the Oregon coast. And the thing is, Oregon, at least in Washington, people would work in Puget Sound and do some research there. But Oregon, there's no real bays, harbors, estuaries where people could do some stuff. And there's just been literally, like you said, a black hole for Oregon. So it's kind of great. You guys are kind of filling in a big unknown there.
I'm not familiar with the coastline there. You mentioned that. Is it just like a straightaway and you just it just drops off and into the deep? Is that what it is?
Well, it's kind of a mix. And so we do have, we have some places with a pretty long continental shelf, other places near sort of Port Orford in the southern part of the state have a really sort of short continental shelf. But I mean, the real like tricky part of it is like there's no big, as Dave said, no big bays that stuff goes into. Like every except for one, access to the ocean is a river mouth. There's one that is the smallest harbor in America, which is like the size of a football field, is the only one that is not a natural river. And so, it's you don't have this big Monterey Bay or San Francisco Bay that is this giant waterway that offers animals sort of a big, open, accessible habitat. And same for us, there aren't these big bays that you can go work in. You've got to get out in the ocean to get into the animals.
I mean, I know I went to Humboldt State for my undergrad, and I did my master's up there in the bay. But you go outside the bay there, it's treacherous unless you really are set up and you're there to pick your days. And Oregon just gets worse as you go even further.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have 40 plus foot waves, and you think about, all right, I'll go out this river mouth, and I really, my first year here was very, very eye opening. Is that because you've got a river mouth, you've got whatever the rain flow is, and then you've got your tide and your waves and your wind, all that stuff meeting at the bar, and you've got for those of you not that kind of bar, it's the bar at the end of a river. And so you have all that wave action there, and so getting in and getting out is incredibly dangerous. That's like the dangerous place that you can be on the ocean. And you might get out and it's fine, and a couple hours later the tide switches and you can't get back in, and the Coast Guard won't let you back in, so you're stuck at sea until it comes down, like,
Wow.
days. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty crazy environment to be able to work in.
Yeah, it's definitely. I can appreciate that. And that's why I think Oregon's always been sort of a black box for what's up there, because it's not easy to work there, and you only got so many days of the year you can really get out to do anything, to find stuff. But you have managed to get, I know, some salmon sharks and 7-gill sharks, and have you gotten much in the way of white sharks up there?
We've been trying, and the white sharks, unfortunately, is one of those stories, is that there isn't a real clear aggregation site like you have in Central California. You've got Año Nuevo or the Farallon Islands or Smallest Point where the sharks seem to aggregate, and we just don't, or at least we haven't found that in Oregon yet. And I think that's sort of a characteristic broadly of Oregon and sharks, is that we don't see any real residency at any of the places. So whether you're a salmon shark or a blue shark, 7 gills, soup fins, all those, we have all those here, but they don't tend to spend much time in any one location. It's almost I've started to call Oregon a flyover state for sharks.
Yeah.
They just kind of they're moving from habitats in California to habitats, maybe in Washington or further north, but they just don't seem to aggregate here in the same way they do other places.
Have you ever tried to, I'm just kind of spitballing here with you on air, but do you ever try to look at, I know, up in Northern California, when the salmon are coming up the rivers, the sea lions come in and the white sharks are there. And have you ever tried to look around when you get those conditions in Oregon? You look around some of the river mouths.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of work off. We'll get reports from folks here and there that they see a white shark here, or there actually had a juvenile white shark off of a beach up here just a month or so ago. I mean, legitimate, teeny tiny juvenile. Yeah. And so we get reports of them, but we'll go off these river mouths. We'll go when there's salmon run. We'll go to places that there's marine mammals, and we just haven't had any luck with it. And I think what's happening is that there isn't that perfect storm of aggregation marine mammals and the right bathymetry and all those characteristics that come together at places like the Farallones. I think we just don't have that here.
Have you talked to the surfers?
Yeah. I mean, I'm one.
I know you are.
Actually, yeah, no, I've talked to them, and actually we the first thing I did here is we collected all of the human interactions, all of the sightings. We actually have a shark page on our website that I just got a report last night of a leopard shark near Coos Bay, which is, we don't get those very often up here, but sometimes. That we ask people to report anything that they see. And so even putting those records together, we also have acoustic arrays up and down the coast, so the sharks that I've been tagging, with Barb Block's team and Sal Jorgensen down in California, when those animals move up, we get those detections. And so we start to sort of piece it together. But again, it's animals sort of moving past these locations and not sticking around for any period of time. So if you're trying to go out and see one of these animals that's, there's a couple hundred of them around, you got to get really, really lucky.
Yeah. So I got to ask you one of the other things. So you guys are going to be hosting the Northeast Pacific Shark Symposium this year in March of next year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. We are super excited. We're hosting the Northeast Pacific Shark Symposium out at Newport at Hatfield Marine Science Center, which is for folks that have never been to the Oregon coast. It is a beautiful area of the coast, and we have brand new facilities there that we're going to host the conference. And it's a great opportunity for, especially for students, to come showcase the work that they do. And I think what's best about NEPS, and Dave, again, you know this better than most, is that it's such a great venue to to be able to share what you're doing, no matter what stage you are as a student, whether you're an undergrad that's been doing a thesis projects, or you're a grad student who's finishing up their PhD, or a PI that wants to talk about their project. It's a great place to have those conversations, and it's set up to network and community build, really. And so we've got a bunch of evenings that are going to be hosted by Rogue Brewery. Going back to what Andrew said, there's some great breweries there. Rogue Brewery is going to host a night. The Oregon Coast Aquarium and Pelican Brewing are going to host another night. So like all these opportunities just to mix and see some of the cool science that's happening along the coast.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a wonderful thing. Obviously I'm a little biased having gotten involved with it, but it really is a cool thing. And I know we started that. We wanted to have it as even grad students and undergrads that just want to present some early in their career, like just doing a speed talk. And it's a chance for them to, you're 23 years old and you don't know anybody. It's a good chance to network with other similar aged grad students and stuff. So it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, it's unique, right? It's the second largest shark conference in the U.S. And it really does create that environment to talk. And so we're changing the format up a little bit this year, and we're doing some faster talks for folks that maybe just want to get the bullet points out there, and some longer talks, and just a mix of things in order to really make the space accessible to wherever you are in your career. And I think Dave, it is great for the undergrads and the grad students, but there's some incredible PIs as well, and other research scientists that are there. So it's not it's by no means just something that you're going to go talk to a bunch of students. You're going to meet some of the the folks that are really the leaders in the field that are there, and you don't often get that opportunity.
Yeah, and it's a nice informal, casual environment, especially for the students that get a chance to meet some of us there and everything. So and when are the dates going to be? It's in March.
Yeah, it's March. Oh gosh, they put me on the spot. It's I believe it's the 19th and 20th. I should have pulled that up beforehand.
I couldn't remember, so I asked you.
It's the Thursday. The Thursday is the sort of meet and greet. Everybody shows up. Registration. We'll do probably a plenary that night. And then Friday's the big long day of lots of talks and workshops, and then we'll go into Saturday, and then folks are on their own to explore Newport and the beautiful coast of Oregon.
Yeah, and if you follow us on social media, Taylor, myself, Chris Lowe, Nick Dulvey, any of us, Alex McInturf, you'll find there'll be information. We'll be posting information as we get closer to the date. So if you want to find out more,
are you going, Dave?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You'll be there.
My plans right now to go. Yep. So
we're excited about it. It'll be an awesome conference, and I think we've been talking to folks from whether Mexico and Alaska and U.S. and Canada that we're hoping to have a really good showing.
Yeah, we usually get Oscar Sosa and Felipe Galvan. So we get a lot of the Pacific Coast Mexican researchers come up. So it's really pretty much from Alaska to Mexico, at Pacific Coast, we get a good cross group of people there. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm planning to be up there and everything. So it'll be great. So this has been super, Taylor. So I got to ask you a question. So like, what would be your advice for like person starting out, a young student who wants to get in the field?
I think my biggest sort of suggestion would be to take opportunities, whether those opportunities are the one that you imagine in that pathway, or there are opportunities that come up. And so, I think I said this before, is that there's this idea of, this linear path from A to B, but that's not how you get there. And it's, for me, in my experience, it's those offshoot pathways that have led to some of the most pivotal moments in my walk to where I am now. And so it's okay to try things. It's okay to not like things. It's okay to say, I don't ever want to do that again. I don't ever want to, do stomach contents again, or whatever it is. No offense to anybody that does stomach contents. But, there's like, those things are okay. Try them, see what they are, see what they're about. I think that's there's this, I think, this false perception that there's a right way to do it. And it turns out there isn't. Like, I would guess that you could have a panel of folks that are, midway through their career, at the end of their career, and none of them will have the same pathway to where they are. I ended up at this position, not on purpose. I mean, I actually, full disclosure, I was a spousal hire. My wife got the job here, and I was like a plus one. But now I have this incredible lab, these incredible people. I get to do all this cool stuff. But it wasn't like I was not an academic. I was not aiming to be an academic. I ended up here sort of through a series of situations that got me here, and I love it. I love the people I work with. I love the science I get to do. And so I guess this is a long-winded way of just saying that, like, take the opportunities and don't think that the pathway that you have in your mind is the only way to do it, because there's so many different ways to get there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Great, great advice, and thanks very much, Taylor, for coming on. And we'll have to have you back on sometime again in the future here. And
next time I'll come and I'll talk about the science instead of talking about all the logistics of.
Hey, look, we do bonus episodes where you can come on and we'll talk about specific science, and we'll do all that. Yeah, absolutely.
Come back and tell us about the flamingos when you get back from.
I would love to. I'll come back with pictures and hopefully all of my eyeballs. Everybody, you worry about sharks and fingers, but birds they got those beaks.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Taylor. We really appreciate it, and safe travels on your next part of your journey.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate being here, guys.
You bet. Thank you, Taylor, for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Dave, being able to travel all that way, like around the world, like you've done it too, where you did grad work overseas. It's an incredible story. Comes with challenges, but also comes with some really incredible life experiences, not only from a science perspective, but just from a personal perspective. What was it like hearing that? Did it remind you of somebody?
Yeah, it did a little bit. Hearing about all of his travels and his going around. He mentioned about spending 6 months out of the country a year, and I'm like, I got that one. I know what that's like. But he's got even more challenges, because it was just me going, where he has a spouse and she's in the field, but then he's got 2 young children who are now 9 and 11. But it sounds like he's been taking them since they were basically born. Didn't slow him and his wife up from taking them on a journey around the world. And so those kids would be an amazing experience when they get older, having that experience of being in all these different countries. And,
absolutely. And
then of course he's got all his gear to bring. He got, him and his wife's in the field, so she's got all her gear to bring. Yeah. So it's quite a big thing for all the different different things, just to bring all the kids, the family, the gear, and then then she's working on birds, he's working on sharks.
Yeah.
It's that was all interesting to hear how he's navigated that so far in his career and everything. So all good.
And even just like not only navigating his career, but also the challenges that come. And I didn't realize this with doing shark research in Oregon. Not an easy place to do shark research. Talking about some of the hectic and treacherous waves and sort of conditions that could happen out along the Oregon coast. Not a lot of bays, so you can't. It's difficult to do like coastal surveys and so forth. So I thought that was interesting. That was new to me. I didn't know Oregon was that that difficult to work within, and being able to work within that, probably discovering some pretty cool things in the future.
Yeah, well, Northern California, Oregon, and the Pacific Coast outside Puget Sound and Washington State, that's pretty rugged. It's pretty rugged to work up there in that area. And as I said, as we talked about in the show, like having gone to Humboldt State, there was a bay there, and you work in the bay, it's okay, you can do stuff, but you go out on that coast, man, it's treacherous.
40-foot waves. Like
That's
huge.
I'm not surprised. Surprised at all. You get out there and trying to do shark work, and he's working on these large sharks, and at least in up in Northern California, in Humboldt Bay, times of the year sharks will congregate in that bay.
Right.
But if you're going out in the open coast like he is in Oregon, it's going to be a challenge trying to find where these sharks are hanging out. And though I think what he said about them sort of being a bit of a highway from going from California to Washington or up into British Columbia, that's probably pretty accurate, because I don't think there's anything really for them to stop off. There's no bays or really good estuaries that they're going to be in there. Whereas
Yeah.
Humboldt Bay is a pupping and area for them, in a nursery area, but it's a bit protected. But boy, Oregon, it's not easy at all.
Yeah, you've got the elements to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have asked him more about the flat sharks up there, the skates, because there are a lot of skates up there. And we'll have to have him back on and talk about the skates next time.
We'll talk about his skate science. That's what he's going to come on. We're going to this is what we want to talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about skates. We'll give him that. Yeah. But no, he's kind of like a lot of other things besides the international stuff. He started back in Ohio, went to New England, out to Washington, then to Florida, and then back to Oregon. Or no, actually, California. No, he went to California and then and everything. And so it was
Germany
interesting.
And then Oregon, yeah.
And then it was interesting that his wife actually got the position in Oregon, and he was, as he said, the +1 to get on there. So,
well, I think he also undersells himself as well. I find when somebody says, "Hey, my spouse is over there, I got a job there too." He does pretty incredible work too, and he's had that experience around the world. So yes, potentially, that's what it is. But I think they're not just going to hire someone just for the sake of hiring. They've got to be a really good scientist, and that's what he is, and his wife is too. And I think that Oregon State benefited from that for sure.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about his wife's background. It didn't get into that, but I know Taylor's very prolific in terms of his publication record. And as I tell people, if you're going to go in the field, that's the currency. You got to publish. And if you're young people listening, being one name out of 10 or 20 names is not okay. It's a publication, but they're looking for who's the lead author in that paper, and that's where you need to be when you're starting out. You get a little further in your career, it can change, but starting out, you need to be the lead on some papers. That's what's going to help. That's going to be your currency for getting a position.
No doubt.
But yeah, it was pretty good. We talked a little bit about that Northeast Pacific Shark Symposium as well. We'll probably maybe have someone on from his lab afterwards to talk maybe afterwards. It's a fun conference to go to. It's kind of it's mainly for people on the Pacific Coast here, but as he says, like the second largest shark conference after the AAS here, and we have it every 2 years. So looking forward to that and all that fun festivities that'll bring. So anyway, no, it was really good. We'll definitely have him back on to talk about whatever happens to be going on at his time. And,
absolutely.
So
we're going to look forward to it. This has been great. Thanks again to Taylor for jumping on, especially about to go away for a month in Argentina. Enjoy, safe travels. But we love having guys like him on and girls like him on, and whoever any type of researcher or science shark conservationist, researcher, scientist. That's what we love, and Taylor just kind of embodies that, and I think that's really great to see. So thanks to Taylor, and of course Dave, thanks a lot. If people want to get a hold of you, Dave, how would they do so?
Instagram, Lost Shark Guy, follow me, and also YouTube, Lost Shark Guy. Check out the series Searching for Lost Sharks, Extinct or Alive, and please consider subscribing because that helps funding and continue getting some good programming out there. So.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if you want to continue to watch this, just subscribe to the Beyond Jaws Pod on YouTube. And, of course, you can hit us up on Beyond Jaws Pod on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you listening to us each and every week. From Dave and I, thank you very much. Have a great day and happy conservation.